if you are not measuring your innovation, you're just running a science project. Work ethic is completely self-made. Once you build it, it stays with you forever. Discomfort is a gateway. If you don't push through it, you'll probably never discover your potential. I have to say though, Thomas, I love the idea of this show.
Great.
Because when we talk about technology, by default, we all engineers talk about systems and solutions.
Yeah.
But the real story is about the people and the journey that they have had that makes change possible. And so, it's great to be here. I grew up in India in the 80s and the 90s. And my parents who they really believed in education. But it wasn't really for the purpose of career or independence. It was more like study enough so that you can be great teacher for your children one day. And that was the expectation back then.
Were they teachers professionally themselves?
No, my father, he grew up in the northern part of India in a farming village in Uttar Pradesh. And he grew up with, there was no electricity, no running water. My mother grew up in a nearby village, and she was the oldest of 7 siblings.
Wow.
They both met for the first time during their wedding day. It was like, hi,
Sure,
while they were getting married, And so, but they didn't want to raise the family in the village. And so my father he moved his farming work to part-time and took a full-time job in textiles. So then we moved to the western part of the country in a state called Gujarat. And this is in early 80s. And I remember we were 6 of us in a 1-bedroom rental. And we were always monitoring what time the water will come because our whole life, our whole structure was around the tap because we had fixed slots of when you have water in the house. There was no refrigerator, no TV. I think I remember the most prized possession we had was like this massive 30-inch silver color radio. My father got it for like 5,000 rupees, which was 3 times his monthly salary of $25.
How much programming was there on the radio? Was it constant? Yeah.
I don't remember at this point of time, but it was our entertainment.
Sure.
It was our news. And we are North Indians, so there is a big thing about status symbol in northern part of India, and that's where I think my energy and my love for big celebrations and the courage comes from. And so that radio was our status symbol.
Sure.
And so I think by the time I was 10, I was cooking all meals. I was taking care of my younger sisters. Every summer I was working on the farm. I was milking cows, cutting hay, shaping those fuel from cow dung. And I was spending time on the farms. I used to love those massive, green farms till there's never-ending horizons, all surrounded by machinery and tools, especially during the harvesting season. And that's where I built this ability to be very hands-on, to tinker and to solve problems. But then culturally, I'm a blend. I like these big celebrations of the North, but I also have this, I have to say, the frugality and the entrepreneurial spirit of the western part of India, which is Gujarat. And Gujaratis are very frugal, very low-key. They're the opposite of North Indians. And so both of this, I have to say, also shaped my own leadership. I feel very comfortable. I feel very energetic running a big strategy meeting for the board, or rolling up my sleeves and spending afternoon with an intern looking at the code and looking at the design. And so I think both of those have helped shape that part of my leadership as well.
Just like to touch upon the education you were receiving. So were you being taught by your mother while your father was working in the textile industry? It was local schooling. Where did you get your early start in education, and where did your, no doubt, huge intelligence start to show itself?
I don't know about the intelligence, but I'll talk about the education for sure.
Pretty confident, all right.
So because you have 4 sisters, and my mom was the oldest in her family, my dad was the oldest in his family, they were also supporting their younger siblings. And so at our home, it won't be just the 4 of us. There would be other kids, my parents' siblings, come and go throughout the time we were growing up. So we could pretty much do whatever we wanted to do. And so, it's good from that standpoint, like nobody's watching you, nobody's monitoring you. And I was always good at math, science, always like to do these hands-on projects. So in India, when you finish your 9th grade, based on your grades, it's decided whether you'll go into science or commerce or arts. And so I topped my 9th grade. And so based on my 9th grade scores, I went into the science field. And once you're in science field, you only have really not many options. Like medicine was not for me. And so it's like you either do engineering, and probably that's the only other option. And it's like you can pick what fields of engineering you can do. Mm-hmm. So when after my 12th grade, I had the option to do electrical engineering or mechanical engineering. I wasn't a big fan of electrical engineering. Like growing up in the farms, I'd seen incidents of electrocution, and I was always afraid of electricity. Mm-hmm. And I was like, mechanical feels like an exciting place. I always like to do things with hands. So I did took mechanical engineering. And in my family, that was a break from tradition. And my first job out of college was at a manufacturing company called Bartley Boy, which designed industrial blowers and computerized numerical control systems. I was the only woman on the shop floor. They didn't have a women's bathroom until my first day. And my first exposure to technology outside of, I did Fortran programming as part of my engineering, but my first real exposure, hands-on exposure came at Bartley Boy, designing blowers using AutoCAD and Lisp programming. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because Lisp is one of the oldest programming languages. It was invented at MIT back in the 50s, mm-hmm. and it's still in use today. And it has its roots in AI research. So from my early part of this career, life experience and my very early career, two lessons that have stayed for me. One, work ethic is completely self-made. It's input you control. It's really like knowledge. Once you build your work ethic, it stays with you forever. And I'm generally very hardworking, whether I'm working in the office or working with my kids or doing a nonprofit. I just enjoy that rigor of work, and so that's something that I've carried on with my life, and I really enjoy it. The second part, that lesson that has really stayed with me is, discomfort is a gateway. Mm-hmm. I felt really uncomfortable when I was the only woman on the shop floor. When I had to, my boss had to help, create a sign of ladies only and put it on one of the bathrooms of the adjoining building. It was very uncomfortable. But discomfort is a gateway. If you can push through it, only then you can see what you're capable of. And if you don't push through it, you'll probably never discover your potential. Yeah. And so both of these have been a foundation for life for me.
And by the sounds of it, your actual formal education at that stage, you were quite quickly in a placement in the workplace, right? So how or did you come back to education, or how long did formal or higher education go for you in engineering?
Yeah, so I did 4 years of engineering, and then I started working at Bartley Boy.
Okay, straight away.
While I was working at Bartley Boy, I got a part-time MBA.
Okay, right.
And then I worked in a academic institution for 2 years before I came to the US.
Soul of the CIO is sponsored by Nexthink. Now, if you work in IT, you'll know too well how disruptions can derail productivity fast. Nexthink's AI-powered platform for digital employee experience keeps you ahead. It uncovers issues others can't see and resolves them automatically with employee-centric AI and always-on automation. Employees stay productive, IT stays proactive and even preventative, and leadership sees results. Nexthink, ahead of every IT disruption, behind every strategy. Learn more at nexthink.com.
To be a young woman in India at that time in higher education, were you coming up against a lot of prejudice or opposition, or was it a time of opportunity at that point, or a bit of a mixture?
I think what I see is that the more you talk about things, the more you see them. Yeah. Back then, we didn't talk about any of this. Mm-hmm. You just you come in, you do your work, you talk to people, you build, I think those are also the early years when you think of building your credibility through competence and not through additional things that are needed to continue to grow in your career.
Sure.
And I didn't experience any of those challenges other than all the discomfort to deal with. But those are your own doing, and you just overcome that as you gain more experience.
And besides discovering yourself this love of like working really hard, I mean, how was your relationship to engineering itself on an academic level? Were you very, very passionate? Did you feel you'd found a vocation already, or were you just taking it day by day, do you think, at this time?
I always felt like an engineer from the early days. Yeah. Back in the fields, when if any machinery broke down, I was the first one to go there and see what we do with it. I was always involved in it, so it just was a second nature for me to tinker with things, to fix things that are broken. And there's so many, I never owned a formal PC in my growing years. Yeah. Until I came to the US. And so I never had a chance to reverse engineer a PC, but something that I would want to do, but probably not needed anymore.
And what were you specializing at that time academically then?
I was doing mechanical engineering, production, and quantitative systems.
And what did your parents think about this for you? And what were your sisters doing as well at the time?
All four of us are engineers.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
wow.
I'm the second of four. My parents have been very supportive in general. They have come a long way. They had their own, I would say, growing, just parents grow along with the growth of their children.
Sure.
And we had this very unique culture in the house or in our community where, you get married to people within your community. And with the background that my parents came with, during my working in India for 6 years before I came to the US, they set me up on arranged marriage twice within the Tyagi community, and I backed out both times. And it was through real persuasion that my father reluctantly agreed that I could go to the U.S. for higher studies, but he kept secretly hoping that I'll find a Tyagi boy in the U.S.
Sure.
But once I boarded the plane to come to the U.S., I knew I wasn't going back to the old rules.
How did that opportunity open up, and what was the opportunity? What was the higher education opportunity you had here?
So for me, as I mentioned, it wasn't really about chasing Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
It was about just new possibilities. And I would say in some ways it was about breaking free. I was in my mid-20s. I was feeling maxed out both personally and professionally. And I felt that coming to the U.S. just gives me a new avenue, new set of experiences, new opportunities, meeting new people. I didn't quite know what I would be doing here, but I had applied to just one school, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, and so I landed here in August of 2000. I didn't know anyone here, no relative, no friend, no safety net. I had, for my master's, I had two options. I could do a master's degree in computer science in 2 years, or I could do a master's degree in operations and information technology in 1 year and half the cost, because the school gave me a bunch of free credits for the courses I was teaching in India. And so they said you could skip these courses and get your master's degree. And so I chose the latter because it was also half the cost and half the time. And, my first 3 months here in this country were magical. There's vast green lawns. WPI campus is so beautiful. There's clean streets, the beautiful snow. I remember it was December of that year, and I had $16 in my bank account, but I was filled with hope and possibility about the best place in the world that I'm in. And and then of course came the .com crash, when all these jobs disappeared overnight. I remember my seniors in college, because I was graduating with the seniors since I was graduating a year earlier. They had these awesome full-time offers that just disappeared literally over the weekend. And I was just graduating in 9 months. I had done 2 unpaid internships to get experience in the U.S. industry. And, I had very quickly realized that while I had done programming in India, it was very different than what was done here in the U.S. companies. So I self-taught myself VBA, like the Visual Basic for Application, which is very popular at that time, SQL programming and Java through this library books and class projects. It's, I was in those 9 months, like even though the market was down, but because I was already working in the industry through unpaid internships, I landed up getting a full-time internship here. And then, of course, that internship led into a full-time job. But, through this early stage, the two, I would suggest like the 2 lessons that have I got out of that chapter that I continue to use today. One is self-learning. It is a technologist's best friend. These languages will come and go. Industries will change, technologies evolve, everything is constantly changing in this sector. But if you can self-teach yourself, you'll not get obsolete. And then the second lesson I had was it's starting from zero sometimes gets you this accelerated advantage. Like for me, leaving behind those old traditions and those old norms and starting from scratch, it forced me to adapt quickly because I didn't have any other option. I had to adapt. And like we always talk about this cumulative advantage that, you keep doing the same thing over and over again, and you start early on and you build this cumulative advantage over time. But what I learned is like if that cumulative advantage is not taking you where you want to be, you can just get rid of all of it and just start fresh, start new. It's very powerful. And I have to say, both these as principles and foundations that actually I came back to as later in my career as I navigated different industries. I grew teams and I was constantly part of this constantly changing technological environment.
When you look at across your career, it's quite amazing, right? IBM, Microsoft, Amazon, American Express, right? I mean, it's a who's who, really. So maybe walk us through that. Where was the start to it, and how did it evolve through the different brand names and experiences?
Yeah, so my first internship was at a startup called New Genesis that later got acquired by Waters Corporation, which is a big, massive company, and it's in the life sciences space. But I worked there for 2 years, and those 2 years for me, that's where I got my visa, because when you are a student here and you transition from your F1 visa to an H1 visa, that's a massive milestone. Most people don't realize who are not in that in that place. It's like getting a rebirth because without that H1B visa, of course you can't be working here. And it's I remember that was such a big moment when that visa arrived. And then in the next year I got a call from a recruiter at IBM, and of course, coming from a very rural background in India, and then growing up in a Western place where you got to see a lot more, and then coming to the US, like when you think about IBM, this is like early 2000, you're like, wow, this is like the fanciest place you could be working, and they're also in America. And so, of course, you take the call, and I go for the interview, and I talk about everything in the interview that I was doing in my internship and in my last 2 years. And before I reached home after the interview, I had a job offer. So, of course, I was going to take it. And so IBM was interesting because, each of these companies that I worked at after, they contributed a part to my leadership DNA. What IBM taught me was process and scale. And so I learned that governance is not the enemy of innovation. It's actually the scaffolding that allows innovation to scale.
Okay.
And then I come to Microsoft, and Microsoft couldn't be any more different than IBM. But Microsoft taught me platform thinking. How you unlock innovation by having this cohesive platform strategy that can, once you have this platform, it unlocks this creativity and innovation from multiples of products. And that concept wasn't that new back then, the whole platform concept. It's everywhere now in the last 10 years, but this was back in 2007. And so I learned this platform thinking, but also learned the flip side is what is the cost of silos, and how silos in the organization not only kill innovation, but also fragment the entire company. Because everyone is optimizing for their silo, and you miss these big waves that happen in this technology evolution. And that is what Microsoft was going through all the way getting into 2012 and 2013. And then Amazon was a fabulous masterclass in customer obsession. Like they measure everything.
What year was it you were at Amazon, by the way?
I was
When did
in
you join?
2014.
2014,
Yeah.
yeah.
Every single decision you make at Amazon has to be tied back to customer value. And it's like we measured everything, like operational excellence, speed, every metric for business performance, financial metric, non-financial metric. And truly, like the big lesson I learned there was if you are not measuring your innovation, you're just running a science project, because there's no accountability if you're not measuring things. And I see in my career, I see so many companies running hundreds and hundreds of experiments for decades over, and there's no accountability for that innovation. And if you're not measuring it and there's no accountability, that's not going to drive value for the company or for the business. And then I came to American Express, which was it was a great bridge for me between my engineering roots and this whole enterprise leadership. I was, through my roles before, you move fast and you break things.
Yeah.
And you can't do that in financial services. You move fast and you have to protect things.
Yeah.
So what I learned there was to push through innovation while continuing to build this trust with business, trust with customers. And how do you build these long-term relationships with people across functions? It's not just about the tech. It's not just about the product you're launching. It's, it's building relationship across functions. And so when I put all this together, I have to say, key learnings for me was how do you, as a technologist, think about whatever you deliver has to have a measurable value. You can't be a technologist working behind the scenes and not be able to translate the work that you do in terms of top line growth or bottom line savings. You have to do that. The other aspect was you have to build alliances across functions, across business units, and you have to embrace criticism. And look at criticism as data, because especially when you are in these enterprise leadership roles, you are pushing boundaries in multiple places, and you have to be open and embracing that feedback and 360 feedback coming in as you push for the change or drive innovation. And lastly, it's so important that leaders delegate, because delegation isn't about, you obviously can't do everything on your own. And as engineers, we really struggle to delegate. We feel like we're the best person to do everything. And, it's so important to delegate because not only it allows you to scale, but it's also how you grow other leaders. You give them an opportunity to do the work that you are doing. You move on to doing other things, and you mentor them and coach them, and you grow them. And I think, as I look at all of these roles, and when I stepped into my first CTO role, I was not a technologist or just a technologist. I was a team builder. I was a challenger of silos. I knew how to deliver at startup speed and how to execute in an enterprise scale. And I think all of those roles came in together as I took my CTO role.
We will get to that just in a second, but I just wanted to circle back to a couple of things you mentioned. So this kind of run of companies, IBM, Microsoft, Amazon, American Express, the way you articulate it is there were such distinct cultures, quite distinct places to work, distinct work ethos at each place. What did that experience of these varying cultures teach you about workplace culture in general, do you think, and its impact on what could be achieved?
See, the way to look at cultures is culture comes from three factors. One is the heritage of the company. How old the company is, what were the values, how they have brought the values in together. And over time, as leadership comes and goes, what values did they bring in? How did they drive culture across the organization? So that's one big piece of how cultures are built. The other part is how the business is doing. If the business is doing really well, a lot of time companies continue to take that culture forward. If the businesses are not doing well, the culture can get impacted as part of that. Employees can lose their morale, and so that's the other aspect of the business performance that impacts culture. And the third part is what's the stage if this is a startup company, if this is a company headed into a unicorn status, and how fast they have grown, how steadily they have grown. All of these aspects impact culture in an organization. And so the companies that I worked at had their own different journeys, and each company came with their own philosophies. Like IBM was a little bit more in the past. And what IBM learned is to grow fast, you standardize. And so if you think something works really well, standardize it. That way you don't have to worry about it and you can keep the growth. What Microsoft learned was, if you want to work really fast, you have to leverage the creativity of different people. And so in Microsoft, every day there was a new tool. And for every tool, there were 15 of those. I remember this internal portal called Toolbox, which is a portal for developers. You can download tools to do your job, to write code, to build code, to test code, and everything between when you write code and when you deploy in production. So this Toolbox. This was back in 2009. There were 7,000 tools on the Toolbox. And engineers got promoted because they contributed a new tool to the Toolbox. Nice. It was all about that creativity. And of course, at some point of time in the future, Microsoft said, we got to streamline this. So again, that's the cultures evolve because you can't continue that. While they were small, it was great. Amazon, I think Amazon is one company where the culture from the beginning and even today is very consistent. It's all about speed, all about customer obsession, and I think all about measuring everything, and it has scaled. It has scaled to date.
Certainly has.
Yeah, it has scaled for more now, 30 plus years. Yeah. American Express is a very relationship-driven culture. And what I learned after that, the companies that I went to, that the companies that were more heritage companies, and the business is doing really well, they had very stable businesses and they evolved. They didn't overnight transform, but they evolved as the industry and the technology evolved. They evolved with it slowly and steadily. They're a very relationship-driven culture. And so it's, all the nuances come from all those various aspects on how their culture built, the stage of the company, and how the company's performed over the course of decades.
And before we move on to the CTO experience, we kind of touched upon the lessons you acquired from those different workplaces and what helped to form you and forge you as a leader. But I was just interested in terms of the engineering projects you were working on, things you delivered, anything that come to mind that you're particularly proud of from that period of your career as a particularly fascinating, challenging, or successful project?
Yeah, the two things. One is my last initiative at Microsoft was launching Office 365. Right. And that was the first version of Office 365 and the last version of Office 365, because Office 365 is a cloud product. And so that was just the pivot. So before that, every time you launch a product in Microsoft, they'll give you a little a little badge to put on your plaque. And so you can track how many products you've launched, because product launches were 2 years or 3 years or somewhere in between. And so when Office 365 was launched, we all got a little badge to put on our plaque. But it's a cloud product. And once your product is in the cloud, you could be launching every day. So that was the first and the last. So I really cherish that little badge on my plaque for Office 365, and knowing that there's never going to be another one on that. The other one is when I was at Amazon, I was working on, I worked on, my first initiative was a mobile web for Audible. Audible is a app for audiobooks, and it's still running in production today. We launched it back in 2015, and rarely in today's world, the fast-changing today's world, for me it's a matter of pride that the product you launch is still there.
Absolutely.
10 years later, it looks nicer and better, but the first version I'd launched while I was there.
With Office 365, just to take up something about, obviously it's solar for CIO, and it's going to have had a pretty big impact on a lot of our viewers and guests' work lives. What perceptions or understanding do you think you had at that time of the way the workplace was changing, the way technology was going to continue to influence and change the way we worked, which was essentially your customer, certainly when you were at Microsoft, right?
Yeah, Microsoft was always about employee productivity. That was their slogan 20 years back, and that is even their slogan now. They want to make every person on the earth more productive. And Office 365, Microsoft was late in the game of Office 365. And the Google apps we were losing deals in the market to Google apps at that time. And so when Office 365 came, and I'd actually just left the company, I was a transition out of Microsoft at that time, and I started working at another company, and we were the clients of Office 365. And it was new, and so there were bugs in it. And I was like, what is going on? And I would reach out to my my coworkers that, hey, can you look into this bug that we have? And so I think Microsoft always believed in driving highest productivity for every person, and digital. If I look back and think about how technology evolved the day-to-day of every human being, and if I were to pick one company that brought that concept on the table, that was Microsoft. And today, every technology does that, because whether it's a health technology or education technology or just our day-to-day desktop, the work we do on our computers. So today, every technology that we use drives more productivity, all of the Gen AI tools. But back in 2000, that wasn't really the whole concept. Using technology was considered to be a luxury. And, and it's amazing to say that the first luxury is a luxury of time. And so if the tools can provide more productivity, can save time at the individual level, that individual has more time to do more things. And so I think as humans, we all have become so much more efficient. And when I was at Audible, we used to say the same thing. We used to say, people are, we are fighting in the market for people's mind share. And so we are saying, hey, you want to listen to a book? You want to read a book? You don't have time. Why don't you listen to it while you're doing your gym? And so we are doubling your capacity. You're working out and you're listening to a book, or you're driving and you're listening to a book. So we're fighting for the mind share. And we are meeting where we find that the person could have a mind share. So technology has been all about driving productivity for humans. And so we are a very fortunate generation where there's so many tools to make us more efficient if you want to.
And I can't help but think that echoes so much your description of yourself as a child, right? You're very hands-on with working on the farm, with seeing how tools were affecting time effectively. Do you see that dynamic as something you can relate to all the way back in your youth? No.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's dive into your experiences as CTO specifically. What have been some of the biggest achievements, realized ambitions and visions and challenges that you faced in that period of your career? And how did it begin? How did you make the first leap into the CTO role?
So I've always looked at this role of the CTO as a balancing act. You're always balancing between this vision and execution. speed and governance, and innovation and stability. And I saw it all through my career in different places. And when I was in the CTO role, these were the 6 things I was running a trade-off across. And so at ADP, we're a 75-year-old company. And the charter was to help modernize ADP from a services company to a technology leader. And so we have hundreds of products, millions of customers. And so really important thing for us as part of that modernization was to not destabilize anything. Don't break anything as you modernize while we need to modernize. And so it was really about, as we worked through it, it was about ruthless prioritization across products. Like, we can't fix all the products, so we are going to ruthlessly prioritize on the products that have the most value for our customers and for our business. And we have to look at it in a very quantitative, objective way. So that was one way we looked at it. And then we had to think about harmonizing experiences. All of the user experience, the developer experience. We can't have 50 products and 50 different user experiences. We can't have 6 business units and 20 different developer experiences. So we have to harmonize all of that. And then we had to start tracking as we aligned on the strategy, as we started to execute. We had to start tracking it all through adoption, utilization, satisfaction, and various maturity models. But then when I came to ResMed, the constraints were completely different. ResMed is the charter there was, how are we going to transform this company from a medical devices company to a digital health leader. And so any change you make there, either on the hardware side, any code change you make, hardware, software, it's all regulated by the various agencies in the US. It's FDA. And so everything is a regulated software. And so how do you drive transformation there, moving from this hardware-centric mode to a connected digital ecosystem? We had to look at decoupling all of the regulatory code base from the non-regulated code base. It was all a monolithic. And so as we decoupled it, we had to make these really difficult calls around where will complexity live? Will it be on the device? Will it be in the mobile app? Will it be in the cloud? And so we're making all of these decisions. And the whole goal we were trying to accomplish there was, how are we going to unlock innovation for the patients? We don't want to be tied into this monolithic where any code change you do get through like 6 months of test and release cycle, or a quarter of test and release cycle. And so once we separated the code base, we had like 10% of the code base as regulated and 90% as deregulated. And so we were launching new user experiences and the patient experiences through the deregulated code base. And so it's really important that we work through all of this, because within ResMed, as we made all of these decisions and the changes, it was about also opening the space for AI-powered services. How do we think about personalized therapy, patient coaching, provider alerts? And so as we looked at all of these, so the constraints in ADP was we sort of have to keep it very stabilized, but here we have to make sure we are not coming in the way of regulatory challenges. And we have to make sure we are leveraging AI to drive these patient experiences and these provider experiences, because we had a lot of proprietary data as a company with 16 billion nights of sleep data, and we could build these various capabilities into our systems through it. And so the very, very different experiences from that.
You talk about that balance between driving innovation while ensuring stability, security, and scalability. What is the key to getting that balance right, and particularly as advice for other CTOs today, or new CTOs in particular?
Yeah. I think one way, I think for new CTOs, the way to look at is, we are now in this AI era. And the CTO role is going to have a lot more responsibilities in this AI era. And particularly if we think of every CTO, whatever they do today, Now they have to do plus. And they have to do plus in one, have an enterprise-wide AI and data strategy. Nobody asked for it 3 years back. People, boards asked for cloud strategy at that time and mobile strategy at that time. And now it's a data and AI strategy. Everyone has to be the CTOs have to be thinking about how their company is going to go through phased AI adoption. And so it's, initially you begin with these employee productivity through AI, whether it's the developers or the customer support or your marketing and sales organization. But very quickly, we are in a place now to move into how we build these AI-powered products like either AI assistants, AI agents, so we can serve our customers more independently without having to wait on internal employees. And and the next phase that's coming in is complete reimagination of existing products with AI native capabilities. And we did that 5 years back, back for the cloud. We went from all these monolithics to microservices, and we went cloud native. And I think that same time is upon us in the coming years, and it's already in the experimentation stage right now. But then one thing that is very crucial for CTOs now is how they stay engaged with the board for AI, for data, for cybersecurity. CTOs traditionally have engaged with the board, but maybe once a year, and in many cases they don't directly talk to the board. But it's so important to engage the board, and if at least on a quarterly basis. And if you don't get time with the board, it's just send them an update every quarter. And it's really important to seek their input into your strategies, because they all work across sectors, across industries, and having a knowledgeable board is so powerful in today's time.
A lot of what you're talking about with regards to AI adoption, it could be as applicable or as important for CIOs to think of as for CTOs. And interested in what your insights or advice would be to CIOs with a view to these currents in technology in the workplace, and your thoughts on the dynamic between the CIO and the CTO more generally going forward.
So at ResMed, I was the CTO, CIO, CDO, which is the Chief Data Officer,
Wow.
and the CAIO.
All at the same time?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was responsible for all of this. At ADP, I was the CTO, and my closest partner was CIO and CISO. And the way I look at the role of CIO and the CTO is, one way to look at it is think in terms of layers of code. Layer 1, 2, 3, which is your infrastructure, your corporate applications, all your internal systems, and third layer is your developer experience. So layer 1, 2, 3 are the CIO scope. Layer 4 and 5, where 4 is your shared services and all your platforms, and 5 is your customer-facing products. That's the CTO scope. Sure. And so in organizations where there are these two parallel roles of CIO and CTO, if they are aligned, what the company does is they connect their internal capabilities with external ambitions. And if they're not aligned, you're going to get duplicate investments, and you're going to get a very fragmented culture in the company. And so it's so important for these two roles to be aligned from a vision standpoint. What is the technology vision, technology strategy? They have their own domains. That's great. One has layers 1, 2, 3, one has layer 4 and 5. But then because those 4 and 5 layers are built on top of those underlying layers. And so they have to have that unified vision. They have to have a great partnership. And I have to say, if you find one best partner in the company for the CTO, it's your CIO and your CISO and your CFO as well.
And how is AI specifically impacting the traditional silos there more generally, and creating more continuity between 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5?
It's data.
Yeah.
Data is a strategic business asset.
Yeah.
And it because traditionally what happened was the CIOs had all these systems that were capturing data, but we were not building data-powered products. We were not building AI-powered products. But now the glue in between layer 4 and 5 and 1 to 3 is your data layer. And now it's in the form of a global data platform versus data silos across the organization. And so you bring your data platform into either the CIO role or your CTO role, and only then you can have your AI strategy that can drive value for the business.
Excellent. And where do you see the CTO role evolving next, and what makes a great CTO in 2025?
So I captured a number of themes, but I have to say, CTO is about this engineering diplomacy. And so, think of it as a blending of precision of an engineer and with this relationship building of a diplomat. It's really interesting because as engineers, we think about systems and solutions, but diplomats, they think about alignment, trust, influence. And so it's so important for the CTO to blend these two. You have to deliver these great technical solutions, but then you also have to bridge these humans that make change possible. And that's why I see, all these other things that I mentioned before, for me, they all come into this, this whole concept of this engineering diplomacy. But for anyone who wants to be a CTO, the three things that I tell them is, one, always be hands-on in technology. You cannot earn your way into credibility without being technically hands-on. Second, I would say is you have to build this financial fluency. You have to be able to translate the work of your technology organization into top-line growth and bottom-line savings. And the third thing I say is you have to build these alliances. You have to build relationships across functions. Just your competence, your technical depth, your great ideas aren't going to work through until you earn trust and build relationships. Because the CTO sits in between what the technology can make possible and what's practical for the business. There's so many things even today with AI that's possible. They may not necessarily be what's right for the business at this point of time. They may not be ready. And the CTO sits in between because they understand the capability of technology. And they have to be very business-oriented and financial-oriented so they can understand whether it's the right thing for the business at this time or not.
Phenomenal. And before we let you go, just before we started filming, you were saying that you love the idea of solar for CIO because we often forget the person inside the technology, the people that are at the root of the technology industry. I mean, just your thoughts on that and the significance of the individual and the individual story in your own life and your own story and others.
Yeah, it's, when we come into an organization, we are coming as a full person. We bring in our strengths. We also bring in our fears. We bring in our experiences. We bring in our relationships, and that's why it's so important for leaders as we grow in our journey to be authentic, to stay true to yourself. Like in my career earlier, I've tried copying other people. It has not worked, and that's how I learned that the right path is. We all read about that, and sometimes we only learn through our own self experiences. If somebody could get away with something, doesn't mean you would be able to get away with that. Sure. The context could be different. The relationships could be different. So important for leaders to grow authentically and be so proud about who they have become through each stage of their experiences, even if some of those experiences were not what they thought of. But again, I look back at as those tiles on the mosaic. And, overall, it's you, and nobody else could have those same tiles in the same place and the same set of experiences. And we bring all of those, our stories, into our workplace. And, any workplace, we're constantly making decisions about, what will launch, decisions about people, decisions about how we prioritize, and we bring our whole self to it. And so our unique journeys, our unique stories shape all of those decisions we make. And one thing I've found really valuable is to share things that I have learned, because it's not just by sharing I'm providing an opportunity to somebody else. What I found through sharing, it's sharpening my own ability to understand my own growth and continue to grow from there.